Lagos, in the 1750s. A Yoruba trader stands in the bustling market, cowrie shells cascading through his fingers like water. An European captain watches, pen poised over paper, as the African calculates a complex transaction in his head, converting cowrie shells to gold, adjusting for quantity, factoring in transport costs across 3 territories. The trader finishes before the European beside him can write the numbers down. The captain later writes in his log that these Yoruba are sharp arithmeticians who calculate faster than my crew with pen and paper. Let that sink in. That same mathematical system, the one that let an African trader calculate circles around Europeans, would be ranked as primitive a century later. In 1896, American historian Florian Cajori published A History of Elementary Mathematics. Base 20 counting systems, like what the Yoruba used, were declared inferior, used by lower nations, and avoided by higher civilizations. Base 10, the European decimal system, was the mark of advancement. This wasn't neutral scholarship. It was racist ideology, disguised as mathematics, and it became the standard of teaching for over a century. Cajori was writing at the height of European colonialism, when scientific racism justified imperial domination. He needed to erase that the captain was right because acknowledging African mathematical genius would contradict everything colonialism claimed about African intelligence. But here's what they couldn't erase. Africa didn't have one limited counting system that needed improvement. Africa had multiple mathematical systems operating simultaneously across the continent. While Europe struggled with Roman numerals, a system so clunky it made multiplication nearly impossible, Africans were using computational methods Europeans would later claim to have invented. Today we're examining 4 indigenous African mathematical systems and going to see how mathematical diversity, not uniformity, is the actual mark of sophisticated civilizations. Our story begins with a game, possibly the oldest continuously played game in human history. In 2015, archaeologist Veronica Waweru found 20 Mancala boards carved into bedrock at Lewa Wildlife Conservancy in Kenya. The pits had been worn smooth from thousands of years of use. Dating placed them at 5,000 to 10,000 years old, making Mancala potentially as old as agriculture itself. Think about that. This wasn't invented by settled civilizations with leisure time. This emerged alongside human social complexity, right at the dawn of organized society. The setup looks simple: a wooden board with 2 rows of pits, each containing seeds or stones. Players take turns picking up all the pieces from one pit and sewing them one at a time into subsequent pits, moving counterclockwise around the board. But don't be fooled by the simple appearance. Mancala is a mathematical workout disguised as a game. First, there's the obvious: counting and arithmetic. Every move requires counting seeds and calculating outcomes. A good player is constantly thinking several moves ahead, asking, if I move these seeds, where will my last one land? Will it let me capture my opponent's seeds? Will it set them up for a counterattack? Expert players use a strategy called marching order, arranging pieces in patterns that self-replicate as they move around the board. A configuration on one side creates a similar configuration on the other side, which then recreates itself in a new location. The pattern duplicates and transforms as it moves. This is fractal geometry, self-similar patterns that repeat at different scales. The mathematics describing coastlines, blood vessels, countless natural phenomena, and AI pattern recognition. Ethnomathematician Ron Eglash, who spent decades studying African mathematics, documented exactly how Mancala develops this kind of pattern thinking. Players learn how local configurations produce global effects, how small changes cascade through systems, and how patterns can be stable or chaotic. This is computational thinking, playing out on a wooden board, carved over 5,000 years ago if I'm being considerate. Today, Mancala has over 200 variations across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Over 800 Mancala-like games exist worldwide, all traceable to African origin. The world has been playing African mathematics for millennia. Most just didn't know they were doing math. Now, let's jump to West Africa and talk about a system that uses the same binary logic running every computer you've ever touched. The Ifa divination system, practiced primarily among the Yoruba people of Nigeria and Benin, is over 1,000 years old. At its heart are 256 sacred signs called Odu. Each Odu is generated through a divination process that creates a sequence of 8 marks. Here's how it works. The Babalawo casts 16 palm nuts or cowrie shells. Depending on how they land, face up or face down, he marks either a single line or a double line on a divination board covered in sacred powder. He does this 8 times, creating an 8-position sequence. Each casting is binary, up or down, 1 or 2, open or closed. This process generates one of 256 possible combinations, 2 to the power of 8. Each of those 256 combinations points to a specific Odu in the system, and each Odu corresponds to a vast library of oral literature, poems, stories, proverbs, and guidance accumulated over centuries. It's essentially an indigenous search engine. A binary input code is mapped to a massive narrative database. It's not magic, it's algorithmic, but there's more. When mathematicians analyzed IFA's structure, they found it uses Boolean algebra, the logical operations underlying all digital circuits. West Africans were performing these operations for over a millennium before George Boole formalized Boolean algebra in 1847. And IFA isn't alone. At least 3 types of African binary divination systems exist. IFA in West Africa, a 4-tablet system in South Africa, and Sekiti in Madagascar with 4x4 matrix randomization. Mathematician Ron Eglash traced how binary systems traveled from Africa through Arab scholars practicing geomancy, a divination system that used similar binary patterns. That knowledge eventually reached Gottfried Leibniz in the 17th century Germany. Leibniz, who formalized binary mathematics in 1679, is celebrated as the inventor of binary logic. But the system has demonstrable African roots stretching back over 1,000 years. Because IFA was oral, because it was embedded in spiritual practice, because it was African, European scholars dismissed it as superstition, primitive mysticism. They couldn't see or wouldn't acknowledge that beneath the ceremonial context was computational mathematics, performing the exact same operations Europeans would later formalize and take credit for inventing. We're staying in Yoruba territory because their number system is one of the most fascinating ever developed. The Yoruba base 20 number system was well established by 1000 CE during the foundation of the Oyo Kingdom, though linguistic evidence suggests it's significantly older. Base 20 systems aren't uncommon globally. The Maya used base 20, and traces persist in French, quatravangs for 80, literally 420s. In our familiar decimal system, we count in multiples of 10. The Yoruba system is built around 20, called Ogun. But here's where your brain has to do a backflip. The system uses both addition and subtraction. Let me show you how this works with actual numbers. Numbers 1 through 10 have their own names. Numbers 11 to 14 are formed by adding to 10, so 11 is basically 1 more than 10. But at 15, the logic completely flips. Instead of saying 10 plus 5, the Yoruba system expresses it as 5 less than 20. 16? That's 4 less than 20. 17 is 3 less than 20, and so on. To even say a number in Yoruba, your brain has to perform the calculations on the fly every single time, and this continues all the way up. The number 35 is expressed as 5 less than 2 20s, so you're calculating 2 times 20 minus 5. The number 45 is expressed as 15 less than 3 20s. Your brain is calculating 3 times 20 minus 15. The system scales to huge numbers using units of 200 and 400. Think about the mental gymnastics required here. This isn't primitive counting. This is a population with extraordinary mental calculation ability built directly into their linguistic structure. Every child who learns Yoruba learns to compute before they learn to write. The language itself is a mathematics tutorial. Those European captains writing about sharp arithmeticians? This is why. Yoruba traders performed complex currency conversions mentally while Europeans needed pen and paper. While Europe wrote numbers on paper, Africa carved them into thought itself. By the 18th century, the Borno Kingdom, in what's now northeastern Nigeria, had become the most important center for learning mathematics in central Sudan. This wasn't informal knowledge transmission. This was institutionalized education. Scholars from adjacent regions traveled to Borno specifically to study mathematics. The kingdom maintained formal schools where mathematical knowledge was taught, developed, and transmitted systematically. In 1732, scholar Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Fulani al-Kishnawi wrote an Arabic manuscript on magic squares, those mathematical puzzles where every row, column, and diagonal adds up to the same number. This wasn't copying Greek or Arab texts. This was genuine mathematical research producing original work. Borno scholars also used astronomical calendars, Coptic solar calendars, for determining economic activities like planting and harvest. This required astronomical observation and calendrical calculation, the same skills we saw at Nabta Playa in Episode 2, now formalized and institutionalized in an 18th century African kingdom. Here's what most people don't understand. When mathematical diversity is erased, we lose more than history. We lose understanding that multiple valid approaches exist for solving problems. We lose insight into how mathematical thinking develops in different cultural contexts. We lose the knowledge that there's no single correct way to formalize mathematics. Mathematical diversity isn't a mark of confusion or underdevelopment. It's the mark of sophisticated civilizations solving problems in culturally appropriate ways. Think about it. The Yoruba didn't need base 10 because base 20 with subtraction was more efficient for their trade systems. Ifa didn't need written symbols because oral binary mapping served their knowledge transmission perfectly. Mancala didn't need written instructions because the patterns taught themselves through play. Each system was optimized for its context. Each system was brilliant on its own terms. Europe didn't invent mathematics. Europe inherited, adapted, and formalized mathematics that already existed, including African mathematics. Then Europe wrote a history pretending African contributions never existed. The lie wasn't just about the past. It's about the present. About who gets credit for human intellectual achievement. About which knowledge systems count as legitimate. The evidence has always been there. The games are still played across the continent. The linguistic structures still in use. The calculation methods are still practiced. The manuscripts are still preserved. We just needed to stop accepting Europe's definition of what counts as mathematics and start recognizing that Africa was doing mathematics. Sophisticated, complex, computational mathematics for thousands of years before Europe claimed to invent it. Thanks for watching this episode. If this changed how you see African history, hit that subscribe button. We're decolonizing mathematics, one video at a time. Do remember to like, comment, and share. See you in the next one.